Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. The Atheist Experience is live, January 25th, 2004. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. Ashley Perrion, my co-host as always.
Afternoon.
And joining us on the air again after a long absence, Jeff D.
Hi, everybody.
Former host of this program and currently the host of the Non-Prophets, our bi-weekly internet audio show. Plays every other Saturday at 2:30 p.m. at the 2 o'clock.
Yeah, this is an off week, so it would be next Saturday, and then every other one after that.
And it's at 2, not 2:30, at atheistnetwork.com.
Right, from 2 to 3:30.
Yeah, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Good length for an atheist show. Always seems to work out. Anyway, this show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels, located downtown at 307 West 5th Street between Guadalupe and Lavaca, except for the third Sunday of every month, when we have our lecture series in the Austin History Center located at 9th and Guadalupe. Our next lecturer in February will be Don Baker, speaking on the subject of morality. Other ACA events that we do, social events, include Godless Gamers, which is every Monday night at the home of Russell and Virginia Glasser. That's at 7 o'clock. And ACA Happy Hour takes place Thursday evenings at about 7:30-ish p.m. At Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is near the intersection of Highway 183 and I-35. Like I said, starts roughly 7:30, but people trickle in all evening long. So if you want to go and you don't see a whole bunch of folks at first, don't worry. Just look for the table with the little fish signs on it, and a bunch of loud, boisterous people will eventually flock to that table, and that'll be us. Atheist Happy Hour, Thursday evenings at Antonio's Tex-Mex. Other things that we do, of course, I just mentioned nonprofits. That's every other Saturday at the atheistnetwork.com website, hosted by this man, hosted by Russell Glasser, with various guests. And there is a live interactive JavaScript chat room at the atheistnetwork.com website that you can use to interact with the show. But if you have a problem hitting the atheistnetwork.com website and getting their live feed from their website, you can go to our website at atheist-community.org, visit the radio show page, and Russell has thoughtfully provided a direct link to the live feed from our site. And on that page, you can also listen to about the last half dozen or so Nonprofits episodes. But lots of fun show. Are you going to be back next Saturday?
Oh, yeah.
On it? Good.
Of course.
Okay, good. After a brief absence. Nonprofits next Saturday at 2 p.m. And last but not least, University Atheists and Agnostics, a registered UT student organization. For more information about them, if you are a UT student or faculty member, you can visit studentorgs.utexas.edu/UAA. We'll get that title up here on the screen in just a sec. And I'm sure they've probably, the spring semester is well underway now, so if they haven't got information about where their meetings are taking place, well, they better get it up there. But UAA, there it is, University Atheists and Agnostics for students and faculty members at the University of Texas at Austin. Okay, so that does it just for the regular announcements. Just want to remind everyone, this coming February the 12th, is Darwin Day, old Chuck D's birthday, happens that day, and that also happens to be the night of our happy hour. It's a Thursday this year, so we're going to have some kind of party, just to have some fun. So as soon as we get that information together, we will let you know about that. But February 12th, and I think you can go online to like darwinday.org or something. They have a website for it. They always have, and just various events taking place. It's not an official thing. It's just to have fun. And but it's a good day to celebrate. So, if you're a pro-science person, Darwin Day, February 12th. All right. I think that should take care of it. So just to let everyone know, this is the, I think that's enough with that URL there, Steve. We can, this is the Atheist Experience. We are a live talk show. We take phone calls from viewers, and we have been on the air about 6 years. But if this is your first time to view the show, if you're just channel surfing and you found us, keep in mind that at our website at atheist-community.org, we have a FAQ page, Frequently Asked Questions, where we have assembled all of the most common questions that believers seem to have for atheists, certainly the most common questions that we've gotten on this show over the years from callers. So if you're a first-time viewer, you may want to check that FAQ page, because if you have a question for us, there's a chance we've already answered it. But if not, we're here, we're live, and we're here to take your calls. And we'll get to that later on in the show. But for now, that's it, and it's time for the news with Ashley. What's happening in the world?
Okay. All right. Get the bad stuff out of the way first off.
Oh, good.
Atlanta, Georgia. A husband and wife have been charged with murdering a 6-year-old girl whose back was broken in what police say may have been an exorcism gone wrong. Police said the dead girl...
Well, when does an exorcism go right?
I think that's yeah, kind of what I was wondering that one, too. They don't often work out well. Police said the dead girl, whose body was discovered in a motel room, had been strangled and stabbed, and her back was broken. Now, this is a 6-year-old girl.
Well, that's just lovely. Yeah.
Based on what the adults told authorities, investigators believe they were involved in possibly in a ritual of some sort. It may have been something to do with undemonizing the child in some manner.
Well,
so,
there we go.
So they have been charged. I don't see anything in here. I don't think they've been sentenced or anything yet.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, they've just
I don't even know if they've been
arraigned, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this be, and it'll take some time, right? It took some time. It took at least a year with these two guys here in town.
Yes.
You know, before that went to trial, and they got convicted. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But boy, you know, every time I hear something grisly on the news now about you know, some ghastly violence happening to a child, my first thought is, okay, where does religion come in?
Yeah.
And it's usually an element
Usually
somewhere.
in there somewhere.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, you know, what it is that could, you know, that a 6-year-old child could possibly do that
would deserve that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I guess, you know, but I guess she had a demon in her, so they had to do what they had to do. Yeah.
Beat it out of her.
Yeah. Charming. Well.
All right, and we have another martyr in the works now.
Oh, do we?
In Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Who is it? City Councilman Vernon Robinson, a Republican candidate for Congress, has placed a 1-ton granite monument to the Ten Commandments in front of Winston-Salem's City Hall.
They won't quit.
The 4-foot-tall blue granite block is inscribed on one side with 10 Commandments, and on the excuse me, I can't speak today. And on the other side with the Bill of Rights.
Okay, so on one side of this monument, there's this big religious document.
Yes.
And on the other side of the monument is the First Amendment explaining why that thing can't be there.
Yes.
Boy, oh boy.
Okay.
Robinson said now again, hearkening back to Roy Moore.
Yes, yes.
Robinson said he paid for the monument and installed it without authorization while City Hall was closed for the MLK Day Parade.
Yeah, and which TV evangelist sent their film crew in to film it and make money off the sales of that film this time?
Don't have that here.
We don't know that?
But chances are there is some religious wacko group out there who's gonna who has something to do with this. They're gonna start selling it over the internet and then use that money for his defense.
Or it could just be this guy, you know, trying to get publicity for himself.
Exactly. Look how well it worked for Roy Moore.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was certainly in some ways a great career move for Roy Moore because at least galvanized, you know, the fringe that you know seems to be pretty powerful, at least down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what kind of a career move that was for him when you know when he tries to get elected again.
No, if he runs for, you know, a lot of people are saying that he's going to try to parlay this into a run for governor. That remains to be seen, but it wouldn't surprise me. You know, and you know, he can just inflame passions down there.
Well, this is North Carolina, so hopefully they'll be a bit more rational there.
Well, it's still kind of sort of south.
True.
Yeah.
But
I don't think it's quite as bad, though.
yeah.
We can hope.
Yeah. So.
And the final one. Now, you would think that if I decided to ask a whole bunch of people a question, and I got an answer that I didn't expect, I would say, wow, maybe I was wrong or something. Maybe I should look into this and see what happens. That's apparently what, you know, rational people do. That's not what the American Family Association does, though. They had a poll on the internet, starting in December sometime, I believe, asking how their members feel about this whole gay marriage thing. They had a couple different questions up there, and let me see if I can get the wording on them here. Yes, they had 3 different choices that you could make. I favor legalization of homosexual marriage. That was one. Another one was, I favor a civil union with the full benefits of marriage except for the name. And the last one, obviously their chosen position, the one that they wanted, is I oppose legalization of homosexual marriage and civil unions.
Right.
So they pushed this in December. They kind of pass it out to all their members and say, go to this internet poll and sign it. What they fail to realize is that this is the internet. Word gets out.
Yeah.
Once word got out,
Right.
and it was posted to other websites and email lists and news groups and whatnot, they started getting more votes than they realized, and mostly those going in the wrong direction for them. Now, one thing also to note is on their site, they said that we have this poll, we're going to take these results and we're going to go to the government and we're going to show them exactly how you feel.
Oh, they announced that they were going to take the, the results?
It was on the
they were
top of the
going to
page.
take it to Congress.
And use them.
It was on the top of the page that they were going to go to Congress and take these results.
Don't tell me, let me guess. They're not going to do this now.
No, they've kind of decided against it.
Gee, didn't see that coming.
As of January 19th, 60% of respondents, more than 500,000 voters, said, I favor legalization of homosexual marriage, with an additional 7.8% replying, I favor civil union. So basically, it's a 2-to-1 ratio in support
Yes.
rather than against.
That's right, yeah. 2/3 of respondents, you know, aren't bigots.
And so, yeah.
Amazing, yeah.
And so we're very concerned that the traditional state of marriage is under threat in our country by homosexual activists.
Well, again, how is it under threat? Do these Christians think that if gay people are granted the right to get married, that the police are going to be banging on their door saying, sorry, you must now get divorced?
Yeah.
You know, your marriage is now illegal only
Because you're not gay.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know where they're getting this from.
how is this
They apparently do believe something like that.
Yeah. How is this a threat to traditional heterosexual
their
marriage?
marriage.
Not a threat to your marriage, is it?
No.
Yeah. Wouldn't be a threat to my marriage if I were married. Doesn't have anything to do, no bearing on my personal social life, what gay people do, none.
It might help. It might help me get married if more men would be taken.
But, oh.
Now, they do point out in this article, of course, no such.
Sorry.
Of course, no such poll can be said to represent an accurate picture of popular opinion.
Well, sure, right.
But clearly, the AFA had hoped Congress would take the numbers it planned to produce as exactly that kind of evidence.
It planned to produce.
So it planned to
yeah.
just have a secret little poll, get some false numbers, go to Congress, say, look what we found of the American popular vote.
Yeah, right. I mean,
which is complete fraud.
Yeah, anytime you use statistics or a poll to try to prove something, your results are always going to be suspect, right? I mean...
So now Smith says his organization has abandoned its goal of taking the poll to Capitol Hill.
No, I think that now people who are like pro-civil rights activists
should take the poll. I mean, the numbers are still there.
Yeah, just take. They should say, okay, AFA will do what you said you were going to do and take that poll to Congress and.
Yeah, we made the decision early not to do that, Smith admitted, because of how, as I say, the homosexual activists around the country have done their number on it.
Yeah, when you just wanted your anti-gay activists to do their number on it is what you wanted them to do.
Exactly. When you wanted the bigots to show their numbers and they decided not to.
Yeah.
Now, national polls on this subject, I mean, there have been polls conducted by legitimate polling organizations.
Oh, yes,
right?
yes.
How have they been coming out?
I haven't really seen too much on those, actually. I haven't looked it up or anything like that.
Because that would actually be indicative of what, you know, the public thinks.
True,
it may well be that
public.
the results they got were skewed in favor of gay marriage because of activists saying, hey, you're going to let us vote? We will.
I kind of have a feeling that it was because this was a conservative, you know, a blatantly conservative group.
Yeah.
All the other people are going to.
Yeah, AFA is known for being one of the big ideological, you know, anti-gay
But still,
rights
your
groups.
point is well taken, right?
Yeah.
They didn't open their poll up to the general public, right? They intended for it to only be answered by the people whose responses they could predict.
Exactly. And they basically admit that in the story. I mean, they fully admit that. So.
Yeah, turn around and, you know, bit them on the ass.
It bit them on the butt, so.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Somehow I'm not really shedding any tears for him now. So.
Well, you know, it's just sort of a, you know, entertaining foolishness. So that's that. Anything else?
Nope, that's it for the news this week.
For the news. Kind of light then on the news this week.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, if callers are waiting, and we're starting to get some lined up, but just hang loose. We'll get to callers in just a bit. But first, we want to go ahead and welcome our guest to the show, Jeff D. Welcome back. Martin. Now, we talked last week a bit about how March 24th, I believe, is the day that the Supreme Court is finally going to hear arguments in the Michael Newdow pledge case.
That's correct.
where he basically made the case that you know, for the government to require compulsory recitation of the pledge when it contains a religious statement.
No, I got to correct you there.
Yeah.
Here's
Okay.
this is tricky, and there've been a lot of false reports about what this actually, what the structure of the argument actually is.
Okay.
The law in California that he challenged required teachers to lead the pledge.
Okay.
It didn't require students to say the pledge.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So it was compulsory, but only in a particular way.
Right.
Though, of course, this raises the specter of coercion of students to go along and do as they are expected.
Sure.
In exactly the same way that the high school football game prayers in Santa Fe, Texas, a couple of years back, did that same thing, and that was found unconstitutional.
Right.
Right. So.
So
Yeah.
so the teachers were compelled.
Yes, the teachers were compelled to conduct the exercise.
And as a practical matter, the students were more or less compelled, because who isn't going to?
Right. I mean, it's still a captive audience,
Yeah.
and it's still the government officially leading this activity. You know, it has all of the elements that are necessary to, you know, identify it as government-led.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah. So now there's this thing you do in Supreme Court cases, or in any court case, I understand, or certain kinds of court cases. That's called an amicus brief. An amicus brief is a document submitted by some group other than the plaintiff or the defendant that supports either one side or the other, right? It says these are the reasons why we think that side is right. And the Atheist Community of Austin was invited to submit an amicus brief on Newdow's behalf in the Supreme Court case that's coming up.
Right. Now, can these amicus briefs actually have an influence upon the outcome of whatever decision is made, since the people filing them aren't actually either plaintiff or defendant? They're not directly involved in the case?
I think that their purpose is to simply make sure that the judges are as informed as possible
Okay.
about all of the different viewpoints concerning the case.
Right.
Right. It's to make sure that apart from the specific arguments made in the courtroom, other viewpoints that are relevant are in the judges' minds.
Okay.
So I would guess that, you know, a lot of the questioning that comes from the bench in the Supreme Court is driven by them having received these arguments.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
And they present present the two sides in the case with the arguments to see whether they can refute them. So, so I volunteered to write a brief on behalf of the ACA, and I was happy to do that. It's very, very exciting to think that anything I wrote would go before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's
Like, terrifying.
pretty cool, actually.
And I wasn't the only one. Manda also wrote a brief, and in fact, what actually occurred is several different atheist organizations got together and submitted their briefs to a single lawyer who is putting them together.
Oh, I see.
And to submit a brief on behalf of all those different organizations. It makes the brief longer, more detailed, and represent more people, these are all good things.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
So what I came in here to talk about today is the amicus briefs on the other side. Because to prepare for mine, the first thing I did is I went to Michael Newdow's website, www.restorethepledge.com, where amicus briefs in defense of the phrase "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance are posted for people to read. And I read some. And you wouldn't believe the kind of nonsense grown men are submitting to the Supreme Court in defense of the idea that we ought to not only keep having the pledge, but keep having it with the words "under God" in there.
Yeah, you know, after 4 years of this show, I don't think there's anything that we ever could say about anything that would shock me.
Well,
but
you
never
know,
can tell.
there's a difference between, you know, just people in the community who are, you know, just have a personal interest in religion issues, right?
Sure.
And have their personal views, and it's just, you know, there's not a big stake. It's, you know, they're interested in asking us questions and stuff. That's all fine, you know. But these are lawyers, right? So
okay.
lawyers representing people who care how this case comes out,
Interesting.
submitting arguments that are just so completely vacuous.
But from what
You will be amazed. I
From what you were
guarantee it.
saying earlier, though, this is normal people who are not involved with the case submitting these arguments to the lawyers.
But those people can be lawyers, though. I mean,
But no,
Well, they
but my
could be,
point is, yes, ultimately, well,
But
it's
if the lawyer,
it's not quite that straightforward. I know that in our case, the briefs have been submitted by the different organizations to the lawyer. The lawyer is using those the text we sent them as basically building blocks of a legal argument.
yeah, but
And
he is,
so he's not even like he's not even paraphrasing us or cutting and pasting. He's making an entire new argument.
Yeah.
Right.
But that argument,
he's reformulating all of the stuff we've said to make it, pass constitutional muster.
but is he bound to use those documents and basically just clean them up in a sense, versus?
That's a good question.
Because I mean, if he has his own input in it,
I know that-
can he throw out all these arguments that are completely waste of time?
Well, apparently yes, because there are things that I wrote in the brief that I submitted on behalf of the ACA that have not made it into his final document.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. I mean, his job is to make sure that the final thing is persuasive.
Exactly.
So it does appear that the lawyer can do that.
Okay.
Right? His job is to make sure that what gets submitted is worthwhile.
Yes.
You want to hear what lawyers had thought was worthwhile in the arguments
sure they
in
can't be
favor of
that
under God?
but before you start,
Yeah.
you don't have to submit your amicus brief through a lawyer, do you? Or do you have to?
I think you don't have to, but
Okay.
if you
So some
what
of
the
this-
guy has done in our case is
Well, I'm just saying is
we-
some of these pro under God amicus briefs might not have been vetted by a lawyer before they were submitted. That's all I'm
these
saying.
ones were.
Oh, these were.
You can
Will
tell when they were. I mean,
Okay.
it says the name of
Okay.
the lawyer that.
Oh, all right. Okay. I didn't. That wasn't clear
No,
to
this
me.
is not
Okay.
just people off the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Right.
right.
This is
legal.
lawyers taking actual arguments submitted to them,
All right. Okay.
and their job is to find
Make it make sense.
find constitutional support
Yeah.
for those viewpoints, and then present that to the Supreme Court.
All right. So
Okay.
lay them on us.
Reciting the phrase under God is just ceremonial deism. The contexts of ceremonial deism are patriotic and not religious, and are not part of the ritual of any single religious group. Such references are typically short and generic, as is the reference to God in the pledge. Now, what's wrong with that?
I think I have one.
Okay.
I thought, well, it says ceremonial deism is patriotic. Well, I thought that patriotism had to do with your loyalty and love for your country. It didn't have anything to do with whether you believed in a big invisible man or not.
I think that is correct.
Okay.
This is simply an assertion that in order to
Right.
be patriotic, you have to believe in God.
Yeah.
And
And
another one in there is the fact that they said upholding one belief, something along those lines. Well,
They say it's not part of the ritual of any single religious group.
okay, so it's not any single religious group, but it's monotheism, so it's not
Yeah.
Christianity.
That's
It's Christianity and Judaism and Muslim and stuff like that, but it's still leaving out any non-theists
yeah,
or
it's not identifying
polytheists.
itself with any one
right.
doctrine.
So whether it supports 1 or 50 doesn't really matter because you're not including everybody.
That's
You're
right.
still leaving
let me
people out.
let me jump over to another argument. We'll come back to this one in a second. Okay. Another way, another form that this has taken is the statement: patriotic invocations of God do not attempt to establish a state religion, nor suppress the exercise or non-exercise of religion. Now, this is that whole, the separation clause only says that the government can't establish a single state religion.
Yeah.
But this is nonsense.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what they are asking us to believe is that the Founding Fathers only wanted to make sure there wasn't a single state religion. They want us to believe that as long as the government expresses a bias in favor of a group of religions, that contains at least two,
then that's not.
that even if all other religions are then being excluded, thank you, then it's okay.
That's fine.
And that's absolutely ridiculous. You know, the freedom of religion does not stop at, well, we can't take a subset of all religions and we can't take just a specific religion and call that the main one. You can't take a subset of religions, the monotheist religions, and say those are the official ones that will get the stamp of approval from the government either. There are all kinds of religions out there and viewpoints that are not religious, like atheism, that are all protected equally under the Constitution.
Or should be, at least.
Yeah.
Well, they
are.
That's what the Constitution
Currently they
does.
are. Currently
Whether,
they are.
you know, yeah, right.
Yeah, but what I always find so ironic about the pro-under God side, or what I call the theocratic side, because that's what it is that, excuse me, they ultimately always end up backing up until they're up against the wall, and they end up with an argument which is always some variation of, well, it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
So that's why we should keep it in.
That's the whole ceremonial part of ceremonial
but that's the
deism.
irony of it, because it's like, it seems to me that clearly it does mean something, otherwise the believers would not be fighting for it so passionately.
But it's not just that. I mean, imagine, if you will, that that somebody were to argue before the Supreme Court that slavery is okay as long as it's just ceremonial slavery.
Yeah.
Right? Just saying that something
Racism,
is ceremonial does not make it any less offensive.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying when you do that ceremony is you're saying this thing we have a ceremony about, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And that's not the government's job when it comes to religion.
Yeah.
Government needs to remain neutral on religion.
You don't have ceremonies about things that don't mean something to you.
Well, that's
too.
it. I mean, that's true too.
Yeah.
Right. But even if it is a ceremony, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that you can expect people who are offended by the thing you got the ceremony about not to be offended or not to be excluded.
Yeah. Right.
It excludes them and offends them just exactly as much.
Right.
Right? You can't hide behind claiming it's just ceremony.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to another argument. The phrase "under God" simply acknowledges the historical fact of our founding fathers' religious belief. Do you buy that?
When was under God? The first question? When was the nation founded again? Founding fathers?
Oh,
That would be 1776.
Okay, and when was under God put in?
1954.
Bit of a gap there, wouldn't you say?
That's
Bit of a gap.
Yeah.
Plus, it does not say, the pledge does not say, one nation founded by theists.
No.
Right? It doesn't say that.
Yeah.
It does not say, does not state it as an historical reference. It's stated as a comment about the nature of the United States. That's what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Similarly, they make I've heard the argument, the words "under God" merely acknowledge religion rather than promoting it.
So what? It's not the government's business to acknowledge religion.
Yeah.
Plus, it doesn't acknowledge all religion.
Yeah.
Yes.
It acknowledges only the subset of religions that are monotheistic.
Yeah.
And not even all of those, because I'm pretty sure Muslims are deluded into thinking
That anybody's talking about them. And
that they're talking about Allah. Even though they are a monotheistic religion, it's pretty darn
It's
clear
pretty
in our
blatant.
culture
Yeah.
that they're talking about a particular one. But even if they weren't, even if they want to claim it's generic, that the whole generic argument only goes so far.
Yeah.
It does not go so far as to extend under God to cover things like Hinduism that has multiple gods, Buddhism that is a religion with no gods, or atheism, which is the lack of religion. It just can't cover all of those things.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's exclusionary.
It's just a lot of verbal legerdemain, right? It's just they want to, It's an acknowledgement rather than a promotion.
Yeah.
It's ceremonial, not official.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Right.
an app. You know, they're just trying to make these various apples aren't oranges.
Exactly.
You know, analogy, but it just doesn't really fit to the situation at hand.
By the way,
calling something by a different name
on the,
doesn't make it something else.
I learned something about this ceremonial deism phrase when I read the early drafts of the brief that the ACA has contributed to.
Okay.
The lawyer in that case went and checked, and he discovered that the whole concept of ceremonial deism, it's not an official legal viewpoint. It's just a phrase that has been used in commentary on some Supreme Court decisions by the justices who were trying to explain their point of view.
Okay.
It comes from a lecture by a law professor who didn't say that there is such a thing as ceremonial deism and that makes things like under God and the pledge okay. What he said in his speech when it was originally coined is that there would have to be something like an official recognition of the concept of ceremonial deism in order to make under God and the pledge okay.
Okay.
There would have to be an official recognition. There's never been an official recognition. There's just been a couple of justices in a couple of cases that have referred to his speech and said, yeah, it's kind of like that. That's the reason why it's okay.
So there is not actually anything that actually exists in terms of in a legally defined way.
Right.
That is ceremonial deism. That's understood to be a thing. You know, a
That
particular type of activity.
has legal
Standing
power
or
or
any-
authority.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
No, there's no such thing.
Okay, so this is just some sort of phrase pulled out of someone's hat.
Yeah.
And
It's a blanket term for
Yeah.
a bunch of excuses.
and apparently the way they've quoted that law professor sounds like, you know, when some movie review comes out and the critic says, "Boy, this movie sucks so bad, it's amazing," and then on the poster they just put the word "amazing."
Well, I don't know. I don't actually know. I don't actually know what the original
Yeah.
what the stance of the person who made the original quote was. He may have been in favor of the Supreme Court adopting that view.
Yeah.
He may have been in favor of it.
But he was not identifying anything in some sort of legally binding sense.
That's correct.
That you know, said here is
That's
something
correct.
called ceremonial deism.
All he said was that it would take something like that in order to justify a wide range of things that the government does
I see. Okay, interesting.
that are religious.
Okay.
Okay, here's a good one.
Okay.
Under God and the pledge has become part of the fabric of our society.
Since 1954.
Yeah.
And it was not a part of our fabric of society for 200 years previous to that.
Well, I mean, there is that.
So-
There is that.
But-
Plus,
Again, it's immaterial, right? MTV has become part of the fabric of our society.
right.
Going back to what you
doesn't mean
said,
that-
slavery was a part of our society.
Yeah.
Slavery was part of the fabric of our society for
Yeah.
quite a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several hundred years.
Being
yeah.
part of the fabric of our society is not an excuse.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of things that, there's sort of a corollary to this is the claim that, well, you know, various founding fathers said religious things. Well, yeah, various founding fathers owned slaves.
Yeah.
Just because the founding fathers did it does not mean it is something that we ought to be doing that is constitutional or ought to remain constitutional if the Constitution is simply silent about it.
And again, our founding fathers understood the legal distinction between, you know, what it was that an individual was allowed to believe and profess and what have you, and whether or not the government had any business sticking its nose in there.
Well,
Exactly.
mostly.
Yeah.
There is the one big sticking point on that, the one big example that I think Christians can validly point to as an example of founding fathers doing something officially religious through the government is congressional chaplains.
Okay.
But really, it's not relevant. Just because there's a thing that they did that is just because they did that thing does not in itself prove that the thing they did is okay.
Yeah.
Even though they were the guys that wrote the Constitution.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the part of our culture thing. Here's one of my favorite ones.
Okay.
Because it's so immediate. It's so easy to immediately rebut. The pledge has none of the trappings of a religious ceremony. Well, it's got one. It says God. That's really the whole point of the challenge to the constitutionality of the pledge that currently stands. It's got one of the trappings of religious ceremony in it.
Yeah, acknowledging a deity.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is that you will hear specifically Christian fundamentalists try to claim that just because you're talking about God in a highly reverent, worshipful way doesn't mean you're doing anything religious. Right. I've spoken to a lot of Christian. I've spoken to a lot of Christian fundamentalists who say they completely disdain the very concept of religion. They're like, oh no, religion, tooey. I have a personal relationship with Jesus, and they try to make that distinction. And I think that is the thinking that is behind that argument there. You know, just because you acknowledge that there's a God doesn't mean it's a religious statement. Well, but in fact, I think though that there is a legal definition of what constitutes religion. And it has to do with some sort of acknowledgement of a supernatural higher power or a deity and reverence toward that deity and what have you.
And so, I find it extremely ironic that the same folks who will pretend that talking about God is not itself religion will turn around and make the claim that if we don't talk about God in our public schools, that's atheism.
Yeah.
They can't have it both ways.
Well, they seem to. Well, sure they can. They do all the time. That's how they love it.
All right.
I want it my way.
You're talking about practical reality. I'm talking about rationally. Right.
And it's a bit of a sticking point when arguing with these folks.
Can you say delusional?
If they argue that not talking about God equals atheism, then talking about God equals theism.
Theism, certainly.
All right. All right. Now here, this is the last one that I've marked. There were tons more, but I'm trying to keep this down to some of the more amusing and
just to give you an idea of some of the
and jaw-dropping ones.
Okay.
This is a biggie, but it's a little bit more complicated. So follow with me. Okay. The argument is, it is common knowledge that governmental acts may undergo a metamorphosis from religious to secular. The Sunday Blue laws are the best known example. Okay, now there's references to specific Supreme Court cases. The blue laws in Maryland were challenged on the basis that they were a violation of the separation of church and state.
Okay.
And they were upheld.
Okay.
And in the argument, they say, the court relied on numerous factors in concluding that Maryland's blue laws were no longer nourished by their religious roots and reciprocally no longer nourished religious practices nor perceived as doing so. Those factors were, and here's the factors. 1. Recent popular support of the laws was premised on secular considerations. So they're claiming the reason why people in that region wanted to keep their laws, their blue laws, was not because of religion, but because they had secular concerns.
Right.
You know, people driving around drunk on Sundays or on week, you know. Now, of course, that does not apply in this case. There is no, I've never seen, at least, a secular reason why under God ought to remain in the pledge.
Right.
What is the secular purpose of keeping that in there?
It's an oxymoron,
I'm not aware of
right?
it.
I mean, you know, secular reasons for things, secular statements, secular positions about things don't involve deities.
Yeah,
I
right,
mean,
by
just
definition.
straight up, yeah.
By definition. Okay. 2, judicial decisions dating to the mid-19th century interpreting the blue laws treated them as secular enactments. So they're saying, in cases related to the blue laws, when they talked about whether the blue laws were good or not, they talked about them from a secular perspective.
Okay.
Well, okay, that just raises a big question mark in mind, how they could talk about laws that were there because the religious people objected to the consumption of alcohol on their holy day, right? How they could talk about those secularly, but in any case, there are no judicial decisions related to the Pledge of Allegiance, at least relating to the phrase "under God," that have interpreted the phrase "under God" as a secular enactment.
Right.
There's just no such thing.
So
this is not applicable.
Yeah, so again, the objection to the first point carries over.
Right. 3. The Blue Laws did not single out for prohibition activities offensive to religious sensibilities. Instead, they banned activities that would interfere with, quote, providing a Sunday atmosphere of recreation, cheerfulness, repose, and enjoyment. But that's just a restatement of the first thing, right? First they say, that's why the local people wanted to keep them. And then they say, well, that in fact is actually true.
Okay.
It doesn't seem to be the business of the lawyers in the case to decide that. But okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the biggie. Number 4. Amendments to the Blue Laws had systematically stripped them of religious references and content. So like the Blue Laws, when they went in, said, it's against the law to sell beer on Sunday because God doesn't like it.
Yeah, it's the Sabbath.
And later amendments to the laws took out the because God doesn't like it part.
Yeah.
And
Now
replace-
think, how does this relate
Yes.
to under God in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Let's apply this one, shall
You'd
we?
think, right? What we're asking for is a change to strip the religious reference and content.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly the thing that one of the points considered by the judges in the case that they're using the case as an example of why you should stay in.
Yeah, because it seems to me the only way to
That's
strip
just nuts.
How do you strip it? Yeah, the only way you strip a religious reference out of under God is
Is you
to
take it out.
Yes, to not say that.
Right.
So, that's beautiful.
And 5. Yeah, that's the biggie.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Wow.
they're saying, here's why we should leave it in. We should leave it in because
They took it out.
because the arguments in favor of keeping stuff like that worked because they had taken it out. These are lawyers writing this.
Yeah.
Okay,
With
and
short trains of thought.
lawyerese, right?
And 5, there was no readily available alternative to achieve the state's secular purpose. And again, they're claiming the secular purpose was
Okay,
it
so
would be nice if people didn't get drunk on Sunday, and divorced from religious things. But again, there's no secular purpose to the phrase "under God" in the pledge, or if there is, I've never heard it. All of the defenses of it have been in the form of, it doesn't mean anything, it's not hurting anybody, we're all used to it,
it's
right?
ceremonial.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Not, oh, if we take it out, it will cause some negative consequence other than making religious people angry.
Yeah, there have been a few people that said that it would cause negative consequences, though. But of course,
what?
It's just the sense that kids
where's
will
the
be
data?
so upset and they will be so enhardened by having to learn the new pledge.
says who?
No, in fact, they made that argument. I didn't mention that one, but
it's there, isn't it?
It's here.
Yeah.
They argued that.
These poor children.
No, let me rephrase that. And be fair to them. They argued. They did make that argument, but the purpose of that argument was to encourage the Supreme Court to take the case. Because they were saying, this is important for the Supreme Court to make a decision here because if it just stands, then in California, or in the region covered by the Ninth Court, where
they will have a different
Ninth Circuit
pledge.
Court? Is that right?
Ninth Circuit
No,
Court.
yeah, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
That in that region, those poor children will be thrown into confusion when they have to learn a new phrasing. But wait a minute. In 1954, weren't all the children thrown into exactly the same state of confusion by having to learn a new wording?
Yeah.
That's never stopped them before.
Yeah.
I don't see why.
Well, I think most kids are
argument
thrown
now.
into confusion just going to, just their first day of school in a new grade. It's like, okay, where's the lockers?
Yeah.
This is the
where's
least
the-
of their concerns.
Yeah, I mean, again, so what we found out essentially is that the pro-theocracy people will say anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yes, they will.
And the irony of their position is that they are trying to argue that the reason we should keep religious phrases in these public and compulsory recitations of the pledge is because they don't mean anything.
Yeah.
But they're
is just-
somehow mean enough to make you get off your lazy butt and write an amicus brief,
Yeah.
hire a lawyer, get it printed for a couple $1,000s,
Yeah, right.
and get it sent to the Supreme Court of the United States of America.
Yeah.
Right.
It obviously means something.
Yeah, you got a lot of trouble that they're going to for something that doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
So I had a lot of fun writing the ACA's amicus brief. What I did specifically was list those arguments
Right.
and explain why they were facetious.
Right.
And I'm happy to and proud to say that a lot of that has made it into the final legalized version
Great.
of the document
Well,
that will be submitted. The deadline for submitting the briefs is February 12th, which happens to be
Darwin
Darwin's
Day.
Day. It was very nice. And then the
Yeah.
oral arguments before the Supreme Court in this case will begin on March 24.
Right. So, well, maybe if we can, we might get your original, like, first draft of it, and we can maybe put that up on the webpage, if that's all right, if that can
Sure.
be done,
Sure.
for people to read.
And more importantly, I think
Yeah.
the actual legalized version
Yeah.
that we're going to get from
Yeah.
the lawyer that's putting
No,
it
so
together
will
for
we
us.
be able to do that if it hasn't, if something that's like about to be argued? Or it's just an amicus
no,
brief, maybe
absolutely.
you can.
There's nothing secret about these.
Yeah, okay.
It's just not done yet. Right?
Okay.
The lawyer's still working.
Right,
Okay.
right. Okay, but obviously
Yeah.
you've been getting regular, updates on how it's going because, well, that's terrific. So
I'd definitely like to see a copy of the one.
yeah, yeah. Well, we'll be sure and get that. And March 24th is a big day. Now, what a lot of people, what's very tricky, right, is that we already have one far right wing justice who has recused himself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interestingly.
Thankfully.
He went on the record
Mm-hmm.
saying, that he had, they already had an opinion
Yeah.
about how this ought to come out,
Yeah.
which is a no-no for judges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't go in, as a judge. Your job is to not be biased,
Right.
and he expressed a bias, and
Yeah.
Newdow called him on it, and he backed off.
Yeah,
which
which was
means
great.
we're
He
short
is-
one Supreme Court justice, and
He has got to be kicking himself so hard now
Yeah.
because I'm sure he would like his
Yeah,
opinion in the
legislature means
final
no,
decision.
There's a time to keep your mouth
Exactly.
shut. But what is interesting now is that if the decision, if it turns out 3-3,
Or 4-4.
4-4.
4-4. That's,
4-4.
There's
Right.
right. There's
If
9,
it's-
not
if
7.
If the decision is split.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's split right down the middle, then it stands.
Right. The Ninth Circuit Court.
The original ruling that pissed
Stands.
off all the everybody, that stands. And that is probably going to be pretty difficult for some people to comprehend and to fathom.
Well, I just have to
Yeah.
ask religious folks out there to relax.
Yeah.
We're not. Nobody is there's all these claims going around that there's some kind of assault on religion going on.
They're trying to take God out of America.
No, there is an increasing number of people who are not Christians, who have noticed that they're not being treated with equal rights by the government, and they're asking for their rights to be respected. And there's just a bunch of stuff that Christians have done over the years that they've gotten away with because it hasn't been challenged before, and that's being knocked down because it's illegal.
Yeah.
That's all this is.
Yeah.
Right?
And it has
you are
nothing-
free to go on believing whatever you want.
Yeah.
But now that it's being challenged and it wasn't constitutional in the first place, it's going to have to come down.
But the Christians are going to listen to the Roy Moores of the world who will say things like, today it's my monument, tomorrow it's your church. They don't make that
It's just
decision.
not true.
Yeah.
It's just not true.
It's fear-mongering. That's all it is.
yeah.
Christians having
And
a
they-
church
and they swallow it.
does not impede my rights at all.
Yeah.
Now,
But you
Christians
can't-
having a church, Christians having a church and having special dispensation on land use issues.
Yeah.
Like they got in the Ruluipa ruling, religious land use, blah 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 thing, right? I mean that does tread on my rights because that's giving special rights to religion, and that's going to have to come down. But just having a church, just believe in what you want to believe, doesn't bother me a bit. Go right ahead.
But they won't. What's amazing is they won't listen to you when you say, look, no one is trying to tell you that you can't believe in your God. No one's trying to tell you can't have church services. No one's trying to tell you that you can't have a nativity scene in your lawn. No one's trying to tell you that you can't wear a cross pendant.
Because they love that word public. They love how the government is considered public, and so we can't have any public expression of religion.
But they're confused.
Yeah.
There is a difference between what you do on your own front lawn and what the government does.
The
There's a big
higher ups understand this, and they're just using that phrase because it so conveniently scares the hell out of everybody else.
Because they can use it in such
So
a way to
let's-
make you think any expression of religion outside of your bedroom.
Exactly.
They don't make the
Exactly.
distinction between government, what the
Exactly.
government can do
Exactly.
in regards to religion and what it can't do,
Exactly.
and what any sort of free citizen can do.
Roy Moore can put up his
Yeah.
5-ton monument on his front lawn.
Yeah, nobody
and
would have touched it.
Nobody's got a problem.
Nobody could
with
have cared less.
it. Exactly. I could not care less. Have it up there. Go for it.
And
Make
I
it
have
3
tried.
times bigger.
I have tried via email to explain this very calmly to people who are Roy Moore supporters and to
Yeah.
the fundamentalist Christians, and they're just like, "No, you're out there to form a police state." So that
they're being
Not at
told
all.
that.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
They're being-
They are being fed that line, and I think what we're seeing is the consequence of the part of religion, sort of in general, but Christianity in particular, that plays on a persecution complex.
Yes.
Right. I mean, a lot of Christianity is about how they succeeded in spite of the persecution of the Romans and stuff, and that's very important to them.
Why can't they just?
But it's unfortunate if it gets so important that they start imagining persecution where none is happening.
Yeah. Why can't they just give up? And Jesus didn't win out on his persecution. So why do they have to win? Why can't
what do you mean?
Why can't they just back down? Jesus didn't win against persecution and go to court and get out free.
Well,
He was sent to the cross.
but it was ultimately.
Why
a big
can't the
spiritual-
Christians just lose?
But that was supposed to happen.
well, they could just as easily ask that of us.
Yeah,
right.
sure,
Why
yeah.
don't we atheists just give in?
Yeah.
Just go ahead, play
Yeah.
along, believe in the God, keep our traps shut.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
I mean, they have a right.
Sure.
They
Of
have
course,
a right
of course.
to argue their position. They certainly do.
Of course.
But it's when it gets shrill and irrational that there's a problem.
And if the arguments are specious, they're going to get called on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the
And
part
us
they
too.
don't
I
like.
hope that if we make bad arguments, that people will
Exactly.
call on us and correct us.
Sure.
Exactly.
But
I hope that, and I hope and I hope that we don't get so, we don't latch onto some persecution complex where we start thinking that
Yeah.
the only reason that people disagree with us is because we're biased. You know,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
right. Okay, well, that was a lot of good stuff, and
Thank you.
very worthwhile. And congratulations on the work you did.
it's been a privilege being able to be involved in this,
deal.
and it's a very exciting thing for the ACA
Yeah.
to do, and
Definitely.
this
So-
is one for the history books.
Yeah, we'll see how it pans out. On the 24th will be a very interesting day. I have no idea how long it will take a decision to come down, but certainly they'll be hearing arguments on that day, and so we'll be keeping whatever's up to date on that.
Definitely.
You'll hear it from us. Okay, finally, it's a lot longer than usual, but when we have an interesting guest and we have interesting things to talk about, sometimes it takes us longer than usual to get to the calls. So 477-2288 is the phone number to call us live if you have questions about this issue. It's just a good one, Pledge of Allegiance and under God and government, involvement in religion and what have you. So give us a call, and we're going to go to Charles. Hey, you're on the air. How you doing?
Doing all right. I didn't know you guys were going to put me on.
Yeah, thanks for holding. We appreciate that.
All right. Well, what I have to tell you is a bit off the subject of the flag, but I think you guys are going to be very interested in hearing this. When I was 6 years old, I was taking out, and my entire family, we moved out into the mountains to escape the rapture.
Whoa!
Wow.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It gets better.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, Warren, let me give you a little of my history, and then you guys can ask me details or anything you want to know, and I'll try to keep it brief and tell you exactly what all happened.
Okay.
Born and raised a Mormon. I have family members who are still very high-ranking members of the Mormon Church.
Okay.
I mean, very upper. And my father was teaching at a college in East Texas. He met this individual, we'll call him Doug. Well, this guy basically told my father there was going to be a rapture, and we had to go live in the mountains to escape. So he took me out of school. He quit his job, I guess, without telling them he was quitting.
Wow.
Had students sitting in their class on that Monday, I'm sure. And we hauled off to Arizona. We went out there. We lived in the mountains for 6 months, and a lot of other weird stuff happened.
Huh. Now I say it was to escape the rapture. He didn't want to be raptured. Is that was the idea, or?
Well, there was going to be an earthquake, and all this stuff is what he told
What year are we talking about?
I'm 32 now.
Okay.
I would say this happened. I was taken out of first grade.
Okay.
Okay,
Wow.
so 6 years old or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About that. Wow. Okay. Strange.
And, yeah, we're there.
Were there other people in the group? I mean, were there other people out there? Or was it just you and your?
It was me, my mother, my father, my 2 younger brothers, my little sister, this individual Doug, and his 2 wives. I didn't mention he was a polygamist.
Right. Yeah. There's still
Okay.
some of them out there, and the Mormon Church tries to not recognize them. But so now, why did your father find this man credible and choose to sort of go on this pilgrimage?
Well, my personal feeling on that is he's just weak.
Uh-huh.
So,
Well, he said, did he know? You said your father was like a very powerful elder in the church.
well, no, I have relatives who are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
My grandfather actually is a very powerful elder in the church.
Right. So was this Doug? Was he an authority? I guess was he an authority? Had your father known him prior to this and was predisposed to trust him because of this? Then I'm just trying to. It's interesting to me. I guess it's not an important detail, but I'm just. It seems to me that it would take a lot for a grown man to uproot his entire family,
Yeah.
much more than just the word of some guy he met.
He lives in the shame of it to this day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway. All right.
Well, that sort of gets to my question, which is, how many of the folks that were involved in this?
There was a total, I would say, of 9 of us.
Yeah, of those 9 people, how many came away from this experience realizing that it was all a crock?
Definitely my mother, my brothers, and my sister.
Uh-huh.
And my father, actually, he isn't even a Mormon anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they learned their lesson.
Yeah, there's are you guys familiar with the Bible story of the guy taking the staff and hitting the rock and water came forth from the rock?
Yeah.
All right. That'd be
Sure.
Moses, right?
Okay, I watched my father
I'm
try this.
Okay.
Whoa.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I have a friend whose parents were like wacky New Agers that were convinced when he was a little kid that he was going to learn how to bend spoons with his mind, and they'd give him spoons to bend. So, just a little something for the Christians out there. We don't just only make fun of talk about the wackiness of Christianity. There's wackiness from many different sides.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sure this was a very strange experience for you at that young an age. But on the other hand, I would have to say that it's probably good that you had that experience at that young an age, so that you didn't grow into adulthood yourself with this kind of creepy, irrationalism.
I became an atheist at a very early age.
Well, something like that might do it.
Do you know what I guess was the turning point where you're living out in the desert in Arizona or something like that? After 6 months, they decide, okay, apparently nothing's going on.
Well,
And decide to go
funny
back.
how that happened, how we left. This guy was basically manipulating and using my father. He was spending he would go off on the weekends and stay at resorts while we toughed it out up in the mountains.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not good.
Very telling.
Boy. That's
Eventually, the savings ran out, and
So he
there was no more money.
boy.
So this Doug got a hold of your family's savings?
Yeah, actually, he spent most of it.
Wow.
I guess I had to pay for those resorts somehow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nuts. That's just.
That really sucks.
So, is this Doug in prison at this
Yeah,
point?
Well, I actually did find him, though, through some software. I found out where he's at.
Yeah.
So
Probably a good idea I stay away from him, but
yeah.
he's not in prison. He's still a highly respected Mormon in the Salt Lake City, Utah area.
My goodness.
Wow.
That's.
I didn't think Mormons were into the whole rapture thing. I thought that was more of
Actually-
a mainstream Christian
Yeah.
fundamentalist.
No,
deal.
they have something. Do you remember? Okay, when you were host, right, and this was before the year 2000 rolled along,
Yeah.
and the world forgot to end.
Yeah, we used to have a segment on the show when I was host called the Rapture Report.
And
this was back around 99, 2000, when every kind of religious person in the universe was convinced that everything was about to end.
Yeah.
And that provided endless hours of amusement.
Yeah, because we get like 8 predictions a week of the end of the world for that week. But there was something I think that was prior to the turn of the century, where I can't remember the details exactly, but either someone in the Mormon Church, I don't know if the Mormon Church officially, but their word was going around to Mormons saying, "Get your kids out of school." because
Oh
do you
yeah,
remember?
yeah, yeah. I do remember that.
Yeah, it's been years now, but there was something similar to that.
There was at least some, you know,
yeah.
subgroup of Mormons that
Yeah.
were.
And I
buying
think
into
yeah,
that.
and it's something that get something like 200 kids or something. I don't know if that actually happened, but it certainly got media attention on it, which might have because we reported it. So that might have thrown some cold water on the plans.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is something very much in Mormonism that at least takes the idea seriously.
Would you guys like to know how this whole thing ended?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Please.
Oh yeah. So the punchline.
All right. Well, we ended up back in Salt Lake City after all the money ran out.
Yeah. Wow.
Living with my grandparents there.
Mm-hmm.
And my father would not let my mother leave. And a lot of Mormons will probably get upset if I say this, but they're very demeaning to women. Very.
We've heard that.
You don't say. Yeah.
I've seen it firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we get to Salt Lake City, and the first opportunity my mom gets, she gets the last $400 that was in the account, grabs us, and takes off back to East Texas, where divorce proceedings are immediately started.
Good for her.
Wow.
Yeah.
You go, Mom.
Excellent.
Smart lady. Yeah. And hopefully she got custody of you.
Oh, she did. She got
All
custody of all of it. Oh, and the funny thing is the audio tape was made before we left that between Doug and my father of this whole thing. They wanted a record that they were right or something. And my mom had
Great.
and every time I listen to it, chills go down my spine.
Boy.
These guys literally believed all this crap.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. Wow. Well, it's always handy when people who do stupid stuff tape record themselves doing it, or at least tape record their plans.
It
'cause
helps.
It makes things a lot easier in court. But boy, fascinating story. Thanks. We were
Terrible you had to go through something like that.
Yeah,
but
that was
thanks for
we were
sharing that.
engrossed. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, very sorry that you had to go through that. But it seems like it all turned out well in the end. You know, the courts made the right choice in terms of your mother, and your dad. I guess
Thought he was a prophet.
Yeah, just children and people like wives who are in positions where they, like patriarchal positions where they can't sort of make any free choices of their own. I fully sympathize with, being victimized in situations like this. But, your dad has only himself to blame, is my view, No disrespect to your family, but I mean, it was.
Well, he's got himself and that other guy that talked him into it.
Yeah, but I think when you're a grown adult, you ought to have those critical thinking skills in place and know when someone says, and if you give me all your money, and come out to the mountains with me, then all will be well. There's
It's crazy that he believed him.
Yeah, would you buy a used car from that guy? So, well, thank you for the absorbing
thank you
drama.
very
That
much.
was boy, edge of our seats.
Figured you guys would probably get a kick out of that.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, and feel free to call us back anytime. Okay.
Alrighty.
Take care.
Thanks for calling.
We're very sorry that stuff like that actually happens, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of the reason why they do this show.
It does go on.
Yeah.
It does go on.
Yeah.
So, we heard from that woman that one time who was in one of Lester Roloff's child prison camps that the Bush administration funded. We actually
She called in a couple times.
Yeah. We actually heard from her and heard all of her stories. This stuff happens, Again, it's the lunatic fringe, It's certainly not mainstream religion, but, it does show what a lack of critical thinking can lead to. All right, Brian's been holding very patiently. Hey, you're on the air. How's it going?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Just fine. What's up?
Oh, nothing. Just like a curiosity question. Were y'all, any of the three of you, raised like in a religious family?
Yeah, I was.
I think we all were.
Yeah, me too.
All three of you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm saying, I guess you get to some point where you're old, you get older and you start thinking it's not really working for you, it's not kind of realistic. And then you think for yourself and you decide you're not going to be religious anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in your case, but it seems like the people that were raised the other way around, without church or without any talk of a God or a higher being, something bad usually happens before they find the religion. In my experience, people, so-and-so happened, like a traumatic experience, a low point, a negative event, and then they find the religion when they were raised without it.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone I know or talked to that just, read up on it and thought that it made sense and became religious.
Well, I have had experiences when I was 18. I humored a Christian friend of mine by going to one of these non-denominational, like under a big tent revival type services. And we heard there was a point of the service where we, people would get up right, behind the podium, and they would give their tearful testimonies of how they came to, love Jesus and what have you. And it was the usual stories about how I used to get drunk, I used to snort cocaine, I used to go home and beat my wife and kids, and my life was crap, and it was miserable, and nothing was going right. And then I found Jesus, and now everything's wonderful. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, not only do I not need religion to tell me that, being an alcoholic, coke-snorting wife beater is a bad thing, but I don't particularly think I want to hang out with the kinds of people who need religion to tell them that being an alcoholic, coke-snorting wife beater is a bad thing.
Right.
So, yeah, it's funny how, when a person is down and out, you certainly do see religion taking that advantage.
Yeah. And just one more question was, why, or I guess atheists, why do y'all want to take out God or any kind of religious context out of, necessarily a national anthem or anything?
Okay.
Allegiance?
I'll let Jeff answer
because it kind of counters what the Christians were trying to do by keeping it in. You're trying to keep it out.
Oh,
okay.
Well, no, actually, we're what Michael Newdow is trying to do is have the separation of church and state that is encoded in the Constitution enforced. That's it. It shouldn't have been in there in the first place.
Yeah.
Right, but at the same time,
it's not. Yeah.
Like y'all were saying, just because it was there, just because we had slavery then, doesn't mean it actually applies today. So I guess the separation of the church and state would kind of maybe not apply today.
Well, if somebody wants to go before the Supreme Court and argue that case, then they can try to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if someone really thinks that there's a good reason for America to be a theocracy, but we, that certainly does, and there are probably some people who want to take that view, but I think the majority of Americans understand that when government is church-run, or when government is intermingled with church, or when government is sticking its nose in people's religious business, you get problems. I mean, history has shown that, and that was part of the great American experiment, when our founding fathers put this country together, was that one of the things that wasn't going to be any of the government's business was what religion someone wanted to be. And that's really all it is. Again, people privately can acknowledge, their deity, their beliefs, their doctrines in whatever way they want. You simply cannot have any kind of a government body or an officially sponsored proclamation that acknowledges any kind of a religious statement, because that's not the. It's that it's not fair, but it's also just none of our government's business. Religious belief is your business and none of the government's business. So that's all.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, we appreciate you holding for so long, but we had a lot to talk about there. But feel free to call us back anytime, okay?
Thank you very much.
Take care. Okay. And Robert has been holding on line 3. Remember that phone number to call us live. It's 477-2288. If you got a question on this or any other issue, you can talk to us, talk to our guest, Jeff D. And hi, you're on the air. How's it going?
Hello, how you doing?
Just fine.
Good. Heard y'all earlier talking to the gentleman about the rapture.
Yes.
And one thing that I wanted to say about the rapture, or that word, the rapture, or that event, is that anybody that claims they're going to know that day is a false prophet or a liar or misguiding or con artist or whatever. There's nobody, even according to the Bible itself, there's nobody that knows that day except supposedly God the Father. Not even
What
Jesus.
about what do you think about people who just say there is going to be such a day and we only don't know when?
Well,
what about those folks?
Okay. One is that according to the Bible there is going to be a day like that.
Yeah.
But only God the Father knows that day.
But
not Jesus Christ, not any person on this planet.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
It will be the day that God the Father decides that day.
Yeah, what I'm asking though is, what's the evidence that there's in fact
There's
ever
no
going to be any such day? There's no evidence that there's even ever going to be such a thing.
There's no evidence. The whole deal about whether it's Christianity or whatever religion, in this case Christianity, is faith. And you either believe the word or you do not believe the word.
That's what I thought. Thanks.
Yeah. See, the
If we're all looking for evidence for everything, then, well, it's pretty
Well,
hopeless.
I think that when we're talking about something like the end of the world, that's something that would be important enough, if it was true, that it's worth demanding the evidence.
See,
right?
you-
If
you-
anybody's
you and
going
I-
around,
well, wait a minute.
if
You and
anybody's
I-
going around saying there's going to be this end of the world, right?
Okay.
And not providing evidence, but expecting anybody to believe it.
Well-
right? That's an important enough claim. It deserves a demand for evidence.
Okay,
Yeah.
I hear you. Let me speak now.
Okay.
How are you going to have evidence of that when you're talking about something that's in the future?
Not my problem.
Yeah.
If
Well,
there isn't evidence of that, then the right thing to do is to be skeptical that it's even ever going to happen.
There's nothing wrong with being skeptical because in your mind,
But apparently,
But I think there is something wrong with going ahead and believing it without any evidence.
and as
I
you
think
pointed out,
that's getting into irrationality.
our previous
territory.
as one of our previous callers clearly indicated, and what we were talking about earlier when Jeff used to be hosting, he would bring in his rapture reports, is that there have been quite a lot of people in the religious community who have made a great career out of predicting the end of the world, you know, getting people to either fork over their property, their money, etc., what have you. And again, you could say, well, those guys are false prophets and what have you.
They are.
But that's begging the question. The fact remains is that if you are willing to admit that, oh, well, there are these rapture claims, but they can't be proved,
how can
then it doesn't matter whether or not the person is a false prophet and just trying to profiteer off of the claims. What matters is that no one should be taking the claims seriously.
Well, first of all, okay, y'all spoke. Give me just a moment. Let me speak, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We're just trying to make our position
No, I hear you, and I've
articulated.
heard it, but
All
let
right.
me finish. Is that when you talk about the Bible, and this is spoken in the Bible in prophecy, that there is no evidence that we can tangibly touch or see now that's going to prove it. You either have faith in the Word or you don't.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
Right. Well, that's the whole point. Is that it's
The
that
whole
simple,
point is
that when you go, well, we demand some evidence. Who are you or I to demand from the Creator of this universe?
I'm a
evidence?
rational thinking being.
Rational human beings who have control over our lives.
No, you
That's
don't.
who.
We want control over our lives. I want control over my life. You want control over our lives. But there's things that happen.
There's
that we
things that
have no
happen.
Things that
but
have happened that are beyond our control, yes.
Right. So I'm just saying that if you guys want evidence, you only can have faith and believe about the rapture.
Okay, and the problem with
We
that
happen-
position, hang on, Ashley, the
That's
problem.
what the whole spiritual.
But the problem with that position, the problem with accepting faith as a valid means of, okay, this is how I'm going to make a decision about something, is that it allows these false prophets and profiteers about whom you are complaining so hard to do their business.
Okay, well, one is
because when people take a faith position and say, all right, well, I guess I will have faith in the Bible when it says this thing, and I will have faith in this church leader when he says, we all have to go up to the mountain cabin now because
Nope.
it's going to happen Tuesday.
Nope.
If you're going to say that that's the position, that faith is a permissible way to make decisions about things,
No.
you have to understand that it allows those believers to take advantage.
No,
and
a true believer.
What, okay.
Let me finish, please.
A
true believer
of your
reads the
religion.
Word, and if he read the Word and knew what he was talking about, then he can think. And when he hears a kook say, hey, on so-and-so day, the end of the world's coming, come with me, and by the way, sell everything and bring it with you, I know he's a liar because I have read and I believe and I know from the Word that nobody knows that day. And the last thing is, that is at the end of the book or the end of the world or what, as we know it. It's really not the end of the world. The rapture is not the end of the world. The rapture is another stage that is further down the road, but there's
Okay.
more to the
Right.
world
trouble-
after
here's
the
the
rapture.
trouble. But
The
may I?
trouble with,
Yeah. Jeff
Go
first
ahead,
and
go
then
ahead, go ahead.
No, we're actually arguing amongst ourselves whether we can
The rapture is not the
go
end
ahead.
of the world. according
Yeah, we know.
to
It's
Revelation.
part of the process
Yeah.
that leads to the tribulation
Well,
and the what have you.
it of course depends who you ask, right?
Well, I don't
And
know anybody that believes a rapture is the last day of the world.
th-
It is the gathering up.
Dude,
Go
we
ahead.
speak to all kinds of different Christians. We've heard an astonishing range of different interpretations. So,
Okay.
we're just saying.
Well, the first thing when you're talking about
The
earlier,
issue-
you said
the
something-
issue
your
is-
name Jeff, is that right?
Yeah.
Hang on,
Okay.
Jeff,
First, a little earlier you made a comment about wackiness about
Yeah.
Christianity.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to say about that is, if you believe in Jesus Christ, which Christianity is based upon, there's nothing wacky to me about somebody that taught love and kindness and forgiveness and tenderness and giving to the poor, caring about your brothers and sisters. What's
Yeah, I mean,
wacky?
but-
what's
but-
wacky is the religious formation of man later, where you got thousands of different denominations and the do's and don'ts and the rules. But as far as Jesus Christ, there's nothing wacky about somebody that gave their life trying to do good for their fellow mankind and show nothing but
Yeah.
love and
May I?
kindness. That's not wacky.
May I
Jeff's turn.
respond?
Sure.
gave his life.
Yes, he did.
Do you believe that he is now in heaven?
I believe he sits on the right hand of the Father, yes.
So you are the kind of Christian who says Jesus is the Son of God
Yes.
and not actually God himself? Because we've gotten that,
I
too.
believe he's the Son of God, yes. There
Okay.
are some religions that
And
believe
so-
God and Jesus are the same.
And yes, I know.
But see, but I
yes,
don't
know.
wanna-
but anyway-
But no, hold on. I'm just
But see, that's where we make
I'm
the
just,
mistake
I'm just,
that we
I'm
get
just
in-
asking to clarify,
Okay. All right, go ahead.
not actually going down that path.
Okay, good. Don't, because really
Right.
that's where we get
Okay.
sidetracked.
But the point.
So,
here's-
but please.
I'm trying to
go
get
ahead.
him to
Jesus
shut up so you
gave
can
his
talk,
life.
Joe.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And now he's like vice ruler of the universe.
Vice ruler.
Yeah, there's
Okay,
God
well,
and there's Jesus, right? Jesus is like God's right-hand man, his son, right?
Son of God.
Only second to God in authority over the entire universe, right? This is
Well-
a sacrifice? Where's the sacrifice?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jeff.
That's what's wacky. See,
Jeff?
now it's true. Love and understanding and peace, those are all fine things.
Jeff,
Those are all
if you were
absolutely
crucified,
Now,
I
caller,
don't
I'm
think
going to
being
have to
crucified
insist that
is
you
the-
let me talk.
Okay, go ahead.
it's
I'm
hit-
going
Go
to
ahead.
have to insist that you
Go ahead.
let me have my
Okay,
say.
sorry.
Right? We
Go
let
ahead.
you have your say.
My bad.
Love and peace and understanding, we're all in favor of those.
That's right.
Right? We didn't need some guy to come down to claim that he was like, vice ruler of the universe and come down and tell us that those are good things in the first place.
Jeff,
none of us
Jeff,
guys
how
here.
do you know that
hold
when
it.
you weren't here 2,000 years
All right.
ago?
Yeah, well,
I'm apparently
neither were you,
incapable
caller.
of communicating with this guy.
Yeah.
So either if he's not going to let me talk.
Go
then
ahead.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
he needs to.
Go ahead.
Now
Well,
you keep
come-
saying that you're sorry, but you keep doing it.
My bad. You go ahead.
All right.
Okay.
We're gonna-
So now, not only was a Jesus not necessary to bring that message to human beings in the first place, because human beings without a Jesus can figure that out. Check it out, right? But second, we're asked to believe not only that this guy brought this unnecessary message, but also that he died, except his death gets him this job as like second in command of the entire universe.
No.
It's not. Where's the sacrifice?
No.
That's
Well,
the wacky part.
okay.
You were saying it's not wacky. That bit is wacky.
No, it's really not. Are you finished?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yes, I
okay,
am.
we gotta-
Please, go
I
ahead.
know it's not wacky. That first of all, it's easy for us to talk about where's the sacrifice, but you and I weren't crucified. And
What's that
was
got
a
to do with
brutal
anything?
death.
What's that got to do with anything? If you can, I mean,
That's the sacrifice. He gave his life. He
well,
literally
he gave
gave his
his
life for mankind.
caller, if I knew that after 3 days I would be raised from the dead and got to be one of the co-ruler of the universe, I'd be happy to be sacrificed.
He was
Nail
one of
me
the.
up.
He
I don't
was.
mind.
He was already in the position with the Father before
what?
he came
Who
to Earth.
cares?
He didn't have to come down here and die to become co-ruler.
Hey, it didn't cost him anything. What did it cost him?
Pardon?
The sacrifice entails a cost. What's the cost?
His life.
3 days
His life?
of his
He's
life.
up in heaven, second in command of the universe.
He was before.
How is that
he
relevant?
Was before Jeff.
It's
Before
like,
he came
remember
down here, he was already there.
Caller, remember what you were saying a second ago about how the rapture isn't the end of the world
No, it's
because
not.
we all get to go on? Then death wasn't Jesus' end. He got to go on. What's the big deal?
Well,
You know, if you're going to make that argument about the rapture, you got to admit that you just made it when you talk about a guy dying and going to heaven. Particularly when he goes to heaven and gets a big frickin' prize.
he was already. He had that prize before he came to Earth. He didn't have to
Okay.
die
Yeah.
and then be risen to become.
Yeah, but he had to deal with, walking around the sandals and the robes and stuff and not actually
Yeah.
getting to do much of anything except occasional miracles until he died.
Occasional miracles,
Then he
he's
got to sit
talking
in the
about
then he
he's
got to
talking
sit in the
about healing
throne
the
next to
blind.
Daddy and run the universe.
Jeff.
Yeah.
You-
It's easy to say all
it
that,
doesn't,
make it-
if
you can
death
trivialize
matters,
it if you like.
if death matters, then it matters, right? If
Right.
it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, right?
Death
You
does
can't
matter
say
because there's
you
one
can't say
death.
the end of the world doesn't matter because everybody's going to continue in a new kind of existence in heaven.
No.
But then turn around and say it doesn't matter. It does matter because Jesus died and that made such a big
Jesus
difference. A
died.
friend of mine did the math. You know how long Jesus spent on the cross for the average guy?
Something like
A microsecond.
yeah, something
Oh,
like
come on,
A
.0.
Jeff.
microsecond for every human being that ever lived.
Well, Jeff, come on.
Where
what's
is
what's
the
that got to do with
sacrifice?
anything,
You
Jeff?
guys blow this way out of proportion. Yeah, I understand. I'm looking forward to the Passion of the Christ film because the story is very moving, right?
I don't
Nobody
really care
likes
what
the
Hollywood's
idea.
got.
Nobody
Holly-
likes the idea of anybody suffering unnecessarily. That is a valid and moving story. But all this stuff about he's the Son of God, he's got superpowers, right? All that stuff is unnecessary baggage that we're asked to believe, and you can't prove a darn bit of it.
Well, I don't have to prove it. I agree if you can't prove it because we're not living at that time. But first of all, Jeff,
Well,
really,
you know,
it's really not.
whether you have to prove it or not depends on, you know, what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
if you're trying to get us to stop saying it's wacky,
No, I'm not.
you're going to have to prove it.
I'm not trying to get you to stop anything other than talking about. See, when we give ourselves words and adjectives, and we talk about wackiness, really all Jesus Christ did was these things that I mentioned about love and kindness, forgiveness. But Jesus came it's a part of a plan of salvation for the redemption of mankind.
Yeah, we've heard all about that too.
And you know, we could go off on a tangent about how about how weird that is. That this God who is the creator of the universe would have to go pull this stunt of having a half-human child and then run him through all these tests and tortures and things in order to get to the point where he can forgive us. You know, a God who's in charge of the universe could just say, you know, I think it's time to forgive those folks. Bang.
Okay, I know.
You know,
if you don't believe, I understand.
And I not only don't believe, I think it's nuts.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's a thinking and a rationing that you and I have. And see, if I'm like you and think logic and rational and carnal, that's how I'm going to think too.
Logic
Because
and rational
unless
and
you
carnal?
believe and have faith in either the Bible or God, except it does sound wacky.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
that's
but
what we were.
the thing you got to do is get beyond men thinking and carnal thinking and
believe. And what we need to do is believe stuff with no evidence.
Yes.
Gotcha.
The problem with
gotcha.
But when you're on Earth and you want to believe in stuff, we need evidence here on the planet. But this is a spiritual thing that's above us. And
I'm not even going to think about spiritual things above us if you can't prove there's any such thing.
The way,
Why should I?
God doesn't need
the way I live my life.
Okay, it's Ashley's
Let me just have my quick say here.
All right.
See, I told you, I just play video games this whole show. It's great.
If I have to figure out how to run my life, now I have the choice of being Christian and devoting my life to that and getting the reward in heaven. Or I could say, okay, there's another belief that says that I have to go live up in the mountains and wear gray robes and, you know, meditate for 6 hours a day to get enlightenment.
Right.
That's another path I could follow. Or I could just be an atheist.
Right.
You know, there are hundreds of different choices. Now, I have to go through the world and look for which one of these seems to be the most likely one.
All right.
And so I'm going to base my decision based on actual evidence. Now, you've already admitted that there is no evidence of God, Jesus, the Bible, the rapture, or anything like that.
No, I didn't say that about the Bible.
Therefore, that's going to be one of the less likely choices on my list.
True.
Whereas, you know, atheism and, you know, science and rational thinking, that I can back up with, you know, rational thinking and science.
Right.
And so that's got actual evidence behind it.
Right.
That's the one I'm going to lean
I
more
understand your
towards.
logic. I understand what you're saying.
We got to move
okay.
on because it's like the last 7 minutes of the show. But
Okay,
appreciate a call
give me just a moment.
Call us. Well, we're out of time. But
Okay.
we'll call us back next time. All right.
Tell you what,
Thanks.
when you wake up in the morning, look at the sunshine and the moon, and that is your evidence. That is the creation of the Father, and that is evidence.
No,
Every day I
sorry,
see
not
it, I hear
evidence
it,
of
I
a
breathe
God.
it.
Yeah.
No,
That's
not
a
evidence of a
huge
God.
ball of hydrogen gas that is burning like you
The sun
wouldn't
is a
believe.
massive
There are untold trillions of other star systems just like it.
Yeah.
Untold trillions.
Not evidence of a God.
All
Sorry.
sort of just scattered around with nothing bringing them into any kind of order except gravity and physics.
But
Not a shred of evidence of a God.
but there's very little point, I guess, in going on that path with.
yeah.
But see, well, it's sort of like Now, if you had
was fun.
like the scene in
Got another one of those.
in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where they knew that who was it?
Slarty
Slarty Bart farce.
Slarty Bart Forrest had created Norway because his big signature is along the side of a mountain range. Okay, now that might be evidence of something, but quickly, anybody who thinks that Jesus was all about forgiveness should read John 3:36.
Yeah.
But
And
anyway.
you know, I think that guy's absolutely right, you know?
Yeah.
You have to just believe.
Yeah,
And you know what?
we're not the
That's
just believing
ridiculous.
type.
That's
Okay.
ridiculous. If you have to just believe, then you shouldn't do it.
Okay,
If you're
one
asked to
more call.
believe it without
Tom?
a shred of evidence, you should say no.
Okay, time for our last call. Probably Mike. Hi, you're on the air. How you doing? Hello.
It was me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi.
Just out of a comment for the last caller, he said that anyone who predicts when the second coming of Christ is going to be is a false prophet. Well, the Bible itself says the second coming of Christ will be before the death of the listeners. There's
Yes.
a one of the
That's
sections in
right.
there
Jesus
that-
himself says that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what does that make Jesus?
The Bible should be listened to.
Yeah.
So,
Good point.
Excellent point. Excellent point. There are those of you
Great
sitting
show,
here.
guys.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, there are those of you here who shall not taste death.
Yep.
But now, of course, the the Christian will come back and say, oh, well, Jesus was talking about the Pentecost and all the rest of that. So
Doesn't matter.
so they'll find
Doesn't
it-
matter.
they'll find
That
a
was
way
a
to
prediction of
multiple
when.
choice out of it.
That
Yeah.
was a prediction of when.
well, yeah, I mean, Jesus was an apocalypticist. He was he's very
The
clear.
Bible is nothing if not a big book of multiple choice.
Dwayne, hi. Thanks for holding.
Hey, guys, I'm not an atheist, but I watch your show occasionally.
Appreciate it.
I'm Jewish, and I really, really appreciate your point of view and voice of reason in a world just gone completely nuts.
That word nuts just pops up a lot in this program, doesn't it?
Well, you present a nice, rational view that even somebody of faith like myself can look at and go, well, okay, the Bible could be Grimm's fairy tales for all we know. And it makes for a little more rational thinking. And you also put a little voice of sanity out there against all these particularly right-wing Christian people that just want to hate in the name of God, and somebody's supposed to die so that they can be forgiven for all this crap.
Yeah.
None of it makes any sense to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So my hat's off to you. I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
Rational thinking rocks, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you very much, Dwayne. We appreciate
you.
that.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just let everyone know, we are here every Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Reruns of this show play every Sunday at 4:30, and every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. here on this channel. And I think we're pretty much out of time. We're down to like the last 3 minutes of the program, so I just wanted to say a few things. The point that you were trying to ultimately get into with that caller,
Yeah.
which, and he was having a hard time getting him to, pipe down, was that, or at least what I was observing, is that there is, in the end, a fundamental difference between the way believers think about this stuff and the way unbelievers think about this stuff.
Yeah.
Believers seem to think that it's perfectly okay to just believe a thing on faith if you feel like believing that thing on faith, even without evidence.
But they go further than that.
Yeah.
You
But,
know, I've got an essay on my website, www.io.com/unigames/WWJD, I think. It's What Worries Jeff D. and I have an essay called Faith is the Glorification of Ignorance, because they go further than saying it's okay to believe stuff without any evidence. They say that is the most ultimate, wonderful
Yeah.
act that you can pull, right? It's the most amazing, wonderful thing to do is to believe all this stuff without a shred of evidence.
Faith is equated with
proves that
virtue.
you're a good person who's really, a groveling little servant of their big invisible space pixie.
Yeah. Faith is, well, it's the, had a thought. Oh, it's, no, it's,
Yeah, it's hard,
it's
hard to handle sometimes.
faith is equated with virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And skepticism is, a human being's ability to think rationally about certain things that are off limits to be thought about in that way is equated with sin.
Right. The whole,
know.
who are you to question God? We're not
Right.
questioning God.
Yeah.
Questioning the people that come to us and ask us to believe in Him without any evidence.
Right.
Those people, if they want us to believe, got to cough up the evidence.
Yeah.
Even
God-
if there is a God,
God
He
has
can't
yet
know
to
until
present
somebody
himself.
shows us.
Yeah. And the basic difference is that either you believe that there are some things that just don't have to abide by basic standards of evidence, the same sort of standards of evidence that human beings, using fundamental science, would apply to any other question.
Or just buying a car.
Yeah, buying a
Building
car.
bridges.
Buying a car.
Voting who you're going to vote for president. Building a bridge, building a house. But there are some things that get to be off limits from those same standards. Believers seem to think that there are such things. Unbelievers say no. I see no reason why there should be anything gets special dispensation, that it gets to be believed just as an a priori truth.
Yeah.
Without the same kind of rational examination you would apply to anything else in your life that matters. And especially if it has something to do with the end of the world, your ultimate fate, that kind of stuff, it
Yeah.
does matter. That's why it matters. But Hey, listen, we had a huge crew here today, a bunch of folks. Jeff, I knew you were going to have fun coming back on. It's great to have you.
I did have fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Sure, sure. And well, after me being on the radio show twice, certainly it was time to bring you back on here.
Always honored to have you there too.
Yeah. We are here next Sunday. We appreciate it. Tuesdays reruns. Don't forget. Visit atheist-community.org for more about us. Theists, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time. Okay? We love you, Austin.